Adam Lange. I work at Lake Tahoe Community College, but I live here. It's a sort of mostly remote work situation, so it's not too shabby. So I'm going to be talking about customizing InfoView. At my employer, at my college, we have business objects XI3.1. And we just recently went through several customization kind of procedures. We customized the interface. We customized a few different features and functionalities. A couple of them are more advanced, but most of them are fairly straightforward. So this will be mostly an introduction to the idea of customizing InfoView. And it's also by no means a complete picture of everything you can customize in InfoView. I mean, there's almost limitless what you can actually customize in the product. Okay, so here's what I'm going to be going over. I'm just going to first talk about some of the motivations for customizing InfoView, why you might want to do it, what are some do's and don'ts. I'm going to go over best practices. There's a few kind of mandatory things I think that you should be doing with every customization that you make. And so I'm going to be going over those. And then from there, I'm going to sort of walk through some of the customizations that we've made. I'm going to point out specific examples, talk about what we did, what the before and after picture looked like, and the process that I took in making those customizations. So we did some basic modifications of InfoView. That'll be the first thing that I talk about, just basic stuff like changing logos, changing color schemes, changing the CSS file. I'll point you where those are located. Talk about how you can change some of the web intelligence default settings. Webl is our primary reporting tool, so I'll show you where you can modify at least some of the default settings in that tool. Talk about how we changed the title and greeting on our login page, how we hid some of the extraneous features of InfoView, like buttons to things that we're not using. I also changed some of the login page instructions, that is the instructions that are printed on the login page. I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about when I get there. And then there's also a piece where I added a dynamic message to the login page to show the last time that our reporting data warehouse was updated. So it's like a reminder to our users of, here's the last time that the data was refreshed from our production ERP system. All of this will be specific to our environment, which is XI3.1. But at the end, I'll go in a little bit, just scratch the surface of some of the things that you can do in 4.0 and point you to some resources there. OK. So several, I think, motivations for why you might customize InfoView. Again, remember, InfoView is the user's front-end interface to the business object system. So I think there's a few motivations to do it. One is that you might want to modify the appearance of the system to give this kind of seamlessness among the different internal systems. So at Lake Tahoe Community College, just in the past couple of years, we've migrated to a new ERP system, a new student information system. We've migrated to a new internal portal system, which is SharePoint. And we've migrated to a new reporting system, which is Business Objects. So there are many new systems that people are using, lots of new interfaces. So the more that we can do, I think, to keep things relatively seamless and user-friendly, the better. The more hope we have that people will successfully adopt all of these newly implementing systems. There's also the idea that you might want to modify the functionality of InfoView to more closely align with actually how you do business and some of the standard procedures and stuff of your organization. And there's also, those kind of unique requirements that creep in, which InfoView or business objects can't handle. And so customizations are required for that purpose. And also, it's just fun. I spend most of my time just writing reports, so it's nice to do something a little extra. Okay, these are a few. I don't necessarily think that these are all of the best practices that should be considered when implementing a customization, but I think it's the most important ones. It's at least the ones that that I've run into or I've kind of learned the hard way. So the first one is anytime you're going to customize some specific piece or some piece of code in Business Objects, some system file, you definitely want to create a backup of that file first. So before you change anything, make a backup of it, then change it. I didn't start by doing that, but then I learned, oh yeah, you should probably do that. So that's what I'm doing now, and you should always start by doing that. You should also thoroughly document all of your customizations. I haven't been through a process yet where we're currently using XI 3.1 Service Pack 5. In the future, we're going to upgrade to Service Pack 6 and then eventually to 4.0. So I don't know exactly how those customizations are going to roll over from version to version, but I know that as long as I've documented them thoroughly, I'm off to a good start. So I know at least I have that. Also, what I found is that most of the customizations that you make, most of the ones that I'm going to talk about today, you always want to restart Apache Tomcat, if that's what you're using. You'll want to restart Apache Tomcat for those customizations to take hold, like changing the logo or changing some text on the login screen. You'll want to restart Tomcat. Also, we don't have this ability at Lake Tahoe Community College. We don't have a test server, but if you do have a test server, obviously it's ideal then to implement your changes and test first, see how they go. We don't have that ability, but if you do, may as well do that.
Just out of interest,
yes.
What do you use to document?
Oh, just I have kind of a standard Word template that I use for pretty much all documentation. And I've taken that and kind of adapted it for back-end business objects documentation. But I've also thought it would be a good idea to start utilizing SharePoint for that, because I can create some custom form or list or something like that to document it. I think that might be more shareable, sustainable in the long run, and it would kind of fit more nicely into how we do other things. So right now it's mostly a Word type documentation, but in the future maybe I might integrate SharePoint somehow.
Right. Or even a wiki.
Yeah, that'd be pretty fun. So there you go. Yeah, that's a good idea. I hadn't thought of that. Okay, so the first bit of customizations I'll talk about are the ones that you can do through the Central Management Console, or the CMC. Okay, so remember the CMC, or the Central Management Console, that's the administrator's interface to business objects. Now, there are a couple of kind of minor things that you can do to tailor your system using the CMC. So if you go into the CMC, and again, this is in 3.1, navigate to Applications, open up InfoView, and then Properties. Right-click on InfoView, choose Properties. You'll get a window that looks like this. Okay? So this is where you can see the CSS file, which is the style sheet, which defines all of the colors, the font faces for different HTML tags and stuff like that. You can see where that is from there. And I'll show you exactly where that CSS file is located. You can also choose a logo option. You can choose to keep the default logo option, no logo at all, or you can insert a custom logo. And I'll show you exactly how to do that in the next step. There's also an option here to modify the header colors. I haven't played around with it Well, I have played around with it, I just haven't actually saved it. But essentially what you can do here is choose different background and text colors if you want to. You know, if your company has some specific color scheme that they want to use, this is potentially where you could make that change. And then there's some simple toggle options at the bottom where you can determine whether or not users see the Preferences button in InfoView. You know, up in the upper right-hand corner, there's a Preferences button. You can control whether or not they see that, control whether or not there's a type drop-down or a filters tab, that type of thing. Okay, so these are some very basic changes that you can make using the central management console. I was mentioning I was going to show you where that CSS file is. That default.css file is located in that directory right there. Tomcat Web Apps, InfoView app, res schema.blue, and the file is called default.css. So if you want to modify that or substitute it with something else, you can do that. I haven't done that myself, but that's where it's located. And the logo that's referenced right here, that's the logo that's displayed on the logon page. It's also displayed in the upper left-hand corner once you actually log into InfoView, but that's the logo. Okay, so how do you change the logo? So this is one of the very first customizations that I made, one of the easier customizations to do. There's a few steps here. The first thing you're going to want to do is identify the image file that you want to use as your logo. You know, get it approved by your boss or whatever it is. Then take that file and copy it to this location on the server. Okay, so you're going to move it to Tomcat, Web Apps, InfoView app, res, and schema.blue. That's a folder. So you're going to copy it into there. It doesn't need to be named anything specifically. Name it whatever you want. So I named my logo file LTCC.gif, Lake Tahoe Community College. Once I did that, I copy it in there. Then I come back into InfoView, or sorry, into the Central Management Console. Go to Applications, InfoView, and Properties. And that's where I change this text box right here. By default, this is checked. So when you just install Business Objects, this option is checked, Display Business Objects logo. So you change it to Display Custom Logo, and then enter the name of your file. It already knows to go to that path, so you don't have to define a path. You just define the file name. Then once you've done that, you restart Tomcat. Okay, so move the file into that location, change the file name in the CMC, and then this is what the before and after picture looks like. So by default, you're going to get that SAP BO logo, which is shown at the top. And then once I made that change, then our Lake Tahoe Community College logo showed up. Some of this other stuff, like LTCC reports and the logos, or the text that's shown there in red, I'm going to be getting to that in a little bit. But that's changing the logo. Okay.
So basically, that's a real-time capability. In other words, if your logo changed, it's going to cascade throughout any reports that you bring up.
Well, it's not a logo that's displayed inside of a report. It's displayed just inside of the InfoView logon page. But you're right, though, if like marketing tomorrow decides to change the logo, I can just replace that LTCC.gif with the new version of LTCC.gif, and it will automatically come through.
Thanks.
Yeah.
The image file, can it be any type?
Yeah, I believe it can be any type. I only tried GIF, but in researching it online, it looked like other people were using PNG and JPEG. So, yeah.
Does it have to be a specific size?
I played with that a bit, and it doesn't have to be a specific size. It really doesn't, but for aesthetic purposes, yeah, you're going to want it to be kind of similar to the logo that was already there, you know, in terms of the ratio of the dimensions. So that's what I did. I sort of took the original file and then kind of tweaked our logo to, yeah. Okay. Next bit that you can do, this is customizing some of the web intelligence defaults. Again, another fairly simple customization that you can do using the central management console. So if you go into the central management console, navigate to CMC, Applications, Web Intelligence, and then detail down into Properties, you're going to get a window like this. So what this allows you to do, so for those of you who use Web Intelligence, you know that when you're creating a report and you're dragging and dropping objects into the report, it gives it a default set of colors. The font face is default, and the page margins are set to default. This is where you can change some of that. Okay, so you can change some of the default colors, some of the default stuff related to page widths, some of the default stuff related to the autosave feature, and things like that. Okay, I haven't played too much with this because we're already sort of knee-deep in Web Intelligence, so changing the defaults now would seem like a bad move. But if you're just if you're kind of in the beginning stages of a Web Intelligence implementation, or upgrading to a really brand new version, then it might be a good idea to look at this and see if there are some defaults that you actually want to change, for which you would get some benefit out of. But that's where you can change some of those. Okay. Next one I'll show you is how we changed the title and the greeting on the Web Intelligence, or on the InfoView logon page. So when you go to the InfoView logon page, assuming you don't have single sign-on, it just pops you right in, and you get a login page. You have what's called the title, which is whatever's shown in the top kind of toolbar of the browser. And also when you minimize it, whatever's shown in the taskbar. And then you also have the greeting, which is like log on to business objects, or log on to what I changed it to, LTCC reports. By default, the title and this greeting both say SAP business objects. Or no, sorry, they say InfoView. Okay, so what I wanted to do is just sort of change it so that it was a little bit more user-friendly, and it was kind of had some alignment with the text and greetings that are used on our other internal systems. So I'll show you how I did that. This one's a little bit more complicated, and it's outside of the realm of the central management console. So this is where you begin to kind of dig into some of the more system back files and things like that. So this is kind of where it gets more entertaining. Okay, so there's a file called web.xml, and it's located under this directory right here, Tomcat web apps, InfoView app, and then web-inf. Okay, there's a file there called web.xml. Web.xml contains a large set of parameters that defines all sorts of things about how a certain text is displayed, what text is displayed, and so on. And one of the things that it defines are what text displays in the title bar and in that welcome greeting. Okay. So here's how you modify that web.xml file. It's actually fairly simple. Okay, so you're going to go into your business object server, and then you're going to navigate to that to that location, to that directory. In that directory, you're going to open the web.xml file. As I said, there's a bunch of parameters in there, but the ones that you're looking for are the ones that are shown in this screenshot. There's one called app.name, and another one called app.name.short. Okay? By default, that text there in red, you'll see that it's filled in with the word InfoView. Okay, so what I did was I just changed it to LTCC reports. You can change it to whatever you want. Doesn't really matter. And of course, before I would do this, I'd back up the file. Right? I'd back it up. That's pretty critical. But assuming that's already been done, you make the change, you save the web.xml file, and then you restart Tomcat. Okay, using the central configuration manager. Okay, so once those changes have been made, then you get, that's what gets you this. You make the changes, you restart Tomcat. That's when you see that these changes have been made. Okay. Now, that logon.to, it's interesting because the text that's LTCC reports is defined in one file, but the text that says logon.to is defined in a completely separate file. So if you want to change both of those, you're going to have to do a little bit more work. But I just wanted to change one. So, okay. Any questions on that? Okay, cool. All right. Next thing I'll talk about is we have, basically in our environment, we're using Web Intelligence, a little bit of Crystal Reports, but mostly Web Intelligence. We're not using any other features really of business objects. We're not using Excelsius. We're not using the dashboard capability. So there's a few links and buttons which are just kind of extraneous for our users. And as I said before, if they're new to the system, I want to just be sure that what they're presented with is really what they need, and they don't get distracted by other things which don't apply to them and kind of get lost. And so to avoid any potential future confusion, I decided to hide those two buttons right there, the ones that are highlighted. Those buttons are displayed in the top toolbar of InfoView after you log in. So after you log in, you're inside of InfoView. You'll see on the top toolbar buttons for Open and Dashboards. We don't use those features, so I decided to hide them. And I did some research online, and here's how I did that. So there's a file called headerPlus.jsp, and it's located in that directory right there. It's under Tomcat, Web Apps, InfoView App, JSP, and Listing. That's where you'll find a file called headerPlus.jsp. And it defines a lot of the structure and functionality and what's displayed, et cetera, in that InfoView header. So again, what I did here was I first made a backup of that file. Then I opened it up. And if you scroll through there, you'll see a couple of .add functions. Okay, these .add functions add the dashboard button and the open button, et cetera. So doing some research online, I found that if I commented out those 3 lines that you see in the boxes, like toolbar control.add button applications, toolbar.add separator, toolbar control.add dashboards, if I commented those out, not remove them, but just comment them out, that's those 2 forward slashes at the beginning of the line. If I comment them out, then those buttons just no longer display. There's not a placeholder or anything like that, they just no longer display. I'll show you what that looks like. Okay. So what I did is edited headerPlus to comment out those lines. I kind of put my initials and a timestamp in there as well. And then I saved the file and restarted Tomcat. Okay, once I made those changes, then when I log into InfoView, you'll see those buttons just no longer appear. Like I said, there's no placeholder or anything like that. There's just no evidence of them being there in the first place, which is really what I wanted. Just a clean listing of the buttons which users actually need. Okay. I'm sure there are lots of other things that you can do in the headerPlus file, other things that you could potentially suppress if you need to. But the things that I know for sure are how to suppress those 2 buttons. But if you go through that file, you'll see there's tons of other stuff defined there. Modify at your own risk, but it does seem like there's lots of things you could potentially do there. Okay. Yes?
Can any of these options be group specific or user specific?
I'm not sure. It would seem to me that possibly with enough coding maybe, it probably could, but I'm not sure. I don't know exactly how that would work. It seems like in theory it's probably possible, but I don't know exactly what it would look like. basically this is just it's a complete kind of universal change. Any other questions? Okay. So that's hiding the unused buttons. Another thing that we did was I changed the instructions that are displayed on the logon page. So when you go to InfoView to log in, you get the login page. It asks you for a username and password. And there are these 2 lines of text right there on the logon page. Okay, one of them says, enter your user information and click logon. That's just how it displays by default. And then there's a second line that says, contact your system administrator if you're having any problems. So I wanted to tailor that so it's a little more helpful, a little more sort of geared specifically to what our process is. So here's what it looked like after I changed it. I'll show you exactly how I changed it, but here's what those instructions look like after I changed it. The red text ignore, I'll show you that in a bit. But you'll see these 2 lines of text here. I didn't change the first line. I left that as is. I thought it was good enough. But the second line I changed to say, contact me if you have any problems. I provided my name, my extension, and my email. And then also, there's kind of a third line. I added a third line, which says, click here to submit a new report or report request. Because we have a SharePoint form where users can go in and request reports. They can say, I want to get this report with this information on it, and I want to have these filters applied and these parameter options and that type of thing. And I need it by next Monday or something like that. So that link just takes you directly to that page. So it provides a little bit more kind of integration with our other systems. And then also in the future, I have a little kind of instruction document that I wrote up, which is intended for non-technical end users, which walks them through the basics of using InfoView, how to navigate the folders, run reports, export reports, that type of really basic information that every report runner should know. And I'm going to have a link to that document here as well. OK, so how did I do this? Here's the process that I went through. This one's, again, increasingly more complicated. This one's is one step more complicated, but it's still very doable. So there's a file in this directory here, Tomcat Web Apps, Platform Services, WebINF lib. Okay, under that directory, there is there's a jar file, an archive file, called platform services _en.jar. Okay, that's an archive file, meaning that there's a bunch of other files contained within it. Okay, then within that archive, there's another file. There's lots of files, but one of the files is called platform resources _en.properties. That's the name of the file. Okay. So what I did was, on the business object server, navigated to that folder. Then I saw that jar file, and I used a program called 7-zip. It's just a free program that you can download to open archives, like zips and jar files and RAR files and that type of thing. So I used 7-zip to then navigate to that properties file. Okay, has anyone here used 7-zip or something similar to it? Okay. So that's what allowed me to kind of unlock that .properties file. So just like that web.xml file, platform resources .properties is a big set of parameters. Okay? And 2 of the parameters that you'll find in that file, one is called logon.first_instruction, and another one is called logon.second_instruction. Those define what's displayed on the first and second line of that instruction text. Okay, so you can define them separately. So what I did was I left the first instruction parameter as is. But then on the second instruction parameter, I entered this text, which is a combination of just straight text plus some HTML to get like the hyperlinks and things like that. So what you see here, those two lines, is created by this text that's in red. Okay, so you can enter really anything you want. You know, whatever you want to display there, you can enter it. And I was very happy to know that it did resolve HTML tags, because that's what allowed me to create the links. Okay, so that's changing that text. You know, again, I think it adds a lot of sort of tailored look and user friendliness to the system, which I really liked. Last thing I'll show is how I added a dynamic message to the logon page. So just a little background. None of our reports point against our production system, almost none of them. We have a separate reporting database called the ODS, or the Operational Data Store, which is part of the kind of proprietary data warehousing solution of our ERP. And that reporting database is updated daily. It's updated about every day at 1:30 a.m. Okay, and we control that, we manage that. In the future, we might make that a twice daily refresh, maybe once in the afternoon or something like that. But as of right now, it's in the middle of the night. So what I wanted to do was add a message to the logon page to remind users this is when the data was last refreshed, this is when it was last pulled out, so that, you know, if there's ever any problem with the refresh or something like that, it's, you know, very evident right there on the home screen. So here's how I did that. Well, first of all, this is that text that I'm talking about. That text right there where it says ODS reporting database last updated at May 9th, 1:30 a.m. Okay, I just put these together this morning, so that's why it's that's updated dynamically every day. Okay, so here's how I did that. Here's the process. There's essentially 3 steps. So our ETL process, that procedure which updates our reporting database from the production system, that's updated daily. After the completion of that process, it knows to automatically kick off a SQL stored procedure. I'm going to show you what that looks like. But that SQL stored procedure, here in step 2, that creates a text file on business objects. So it creates a text file which says the reporting database was last updated on this day and date. Okay, that's the role of that stored procedure. Then the business object side of that is that I customized the logon.jsp page with a little Java code snippet to go out and fetch that text file and display it to the user. Okay. So here's what those pieces look like. First of all, here's the stored procedure. This stored procedure is kicked off automatically after the reporting database is refreshed. What it's doing here is actually fairly simple. It's basically calculating the current date. It formats that date into a nice, easy-to-read text string. And then it pushes that date into a text file. You'll see right here, ODSREFRESH.txt. That's just a text file on the business object server. Okay, simple text file. Then this is on SQL Server, by the way. So this is on SQL Server. There's a little command here, XP command shell, that I use to read and write files using a SQL script. Okay. So that's kind of the first step of this procedure. Calculate the refresh date, push it out into a file. Now you have the business object side. This file, logon.jsp, which is right here, Tomcat Web Apps InfoView app, there's a file there called logon.jsp. And that file is essentially the container of all the stuff which defines what you see on that front logon page. I added this little Java code snippet which fetches the text file where I wrote the date and time, and then it prints it out on the screen. Okay, so that's really all this is doing, is it's getting that text file and then displaying the contents. One thing, and then this is what it looks like afterwards. It displays that. One thing that I found was that on some days, and I couldn't really find a pattern to it, but on some days, even though the text file was updating, it wouldn't show the updated date here. So the best solution I found was to create just a little scheduled process on the BO server to update to restart Tomcat every day, which is easy, and that seemed to solve it. Now it works like a charm every day. And if there's any problem, or the refresh updated late, which happens, or we did a midday refresh, which happens during busy reporting periods, then it's always very clear to the user the timeliness of the data they're looking at. Okay. Looking forward into 4.0, we don't have any plans to go to 4.0 immediately. We will eventually, obviously. So I don't have a whole lot of familiarity over what the customization processes look like. I did a bit of digging, and I found these resources here, and I think we'll probably distribute the slides or something so you can get these links. But at first glance, it does look like customizing in 4.0 is much different than 3.1. Well, you can do a lot of the same things. It's just much, much different. So I think that's where a lot of my backups and documentation will come into play, because I'll know over time I'm going to forget all these little things that I changed. But if I can just go back to my documentation, I'll know what things I kind of need to rechange. So those are some links that appeared helpful. I can't. I'm sure there are other things out there too. In terms of things that really helped me, these are resources that I found especially useful during my research of customizing. There were 2 blog posts by Dallas Marks that were especially helpful. And then there was also an SAP document. This was for R2, but a lot of the things were very analogous on customizing InfoView. So I found both of those pretty helpful. Any questions? Yes?
You said right at the beginning that one of the changes that happened at Lake Tahoe Community College was the adoption of SharePoint for a portal.
Right,
system.
right.
So the big question I would ask is, why would you not have integrated directly into SharePoint as opposed to continuing?
We're definitely going to move there. We're going to be putting reports into that system and potentially just making that a login entry point. We haven't gotten there yet, but that's the next step, certainly. Yeah, it's just now it's just a matter of getting it on the agenda and doing it. But yeah, I think that's the next logical point.
Right. I
Yeah.
wondered if there was a specific reason.
No.
It's separate.
No specific reason. Just that now, just a timing issue. It's not on the kind of priority agenda for now. At least how the priorities are set. But I think that's definitely where we want to go.
Be your next presentation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah. I know. I was thinking about.
Are you
Yeah.
the fish guy?
Yeah.
All right. We want that on YouTube. Do you have that?
I don't think on YouTube. No. I mean, I have the Flash file. Yeah, it's around there somewhere. Yeah.
I missed that one. All I've done is hear all of that. Oh, it's not going to be the fish presentation.
The cat one's pretty good.
Yeah. Compared to the fish, customizing InfoView is probably a real bore.
I know this one is actually about work.
Yeah, exactly. I know. Yeah.
How many report writers do you have on your team?
Just one.
Okay.
Just me.
So it wasn't an issue then restarting Tomcat?
No, it wasn't an issue. No, I mean, I look to make sure that there are no users on the system first,
Okay.
and then if there aren't, I restart it. Yeah.
Do you know if you're if these customizations have to also take effect whenever you drop a
That I don't know. Chad might have some information on that. Yeah,
I do actually, and that's the next presentation.
transitions nicely. All right, thank you.